All right, so 4-5 is quadratic formula, and we're also going to be talking about word problems with quadratics, okay? These are going to be the last two things that we do that's going to be on your test next week. Now, Wednesday is an early release day, so your test is not going to be until Friday, okay? And we are going to be on a lab schedule on Wednesday, and yes, you do need to be here, okay? Monday we'll review, and then Friday you'll take your test. You got plenty of time to take care of whatever you need to. Also, when's the deadline for the Unit 3 test? So that's next Friday, the same day you take your Unit 4 test. So do not wait till last minute to get your retake in. Okay, do it before so that we can concentrate on Unit 4. All right, but you're going to be able to solve problems using the quadratic formula. We solved them using factoring. Quadratic formula you can use for any quadratic. So what is the quadratic formula? When a quadratic is in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, the quadratic formula is what you see up here on the board. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? Now, there's a song that goes along with this. People do different versions. I like the call and response song because it gets y'all active. If you do it right the first time, then we won't have to worry about having to do it over and over again, okay? So, me. I say something, you repeat after me, okay? If you guys do it great, I'll stop. If you don't participate, I'm going to keep on going, okay? So, it goes, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Again, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yes, you are going to have to know this. You're going to need to know this, all right? Now, all right, so let's use the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation, okay? And right now, if this is on your paper, scratch it off. Is it on your paper for your first example? Okay, perfect, because we ain't going to do none of that. Is it in standard form? Yes. It is. Ax squared plus bx plus c. What's a? Just the 2. What's b? And what's c? Those are the numbers that you're plugging into the quadratic formula. Again, the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I can't help but to sing it when I write it. I can't help it. So you plug in b. So that's going to be a negative 7 plus or minus square root 7 squared. Ooh, that's a terrible 2. Minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. You're literally up plugging in all of those values, okay? Now, I'm not wanting you to round anything, okay? We're going to simplify everything. What is 7 squared? 49 minus, what's 4 times 2 times negative 9? Negative 72. Now, that's a negative 72, not, it's a minus negative 72. All over, what's 2 times 2? 4. All we're doing is simplifying from here. Now, what's 49 minus a negative 72? That would be 49 plus 72, which is 121. So I have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 121 all over 4. Is 121 a perfect square? Say again? 11. It is. So When this happens, when the number that's underneath the square root is a positive number that goes in evenly, you're going to get two solutions. Your first solution is going to be what you get when you do negative 7 plus 11 divided by 4. And your second solution is going to be what you get when you do negative 7 minus 11 over 4. What's negative 7 plus 11? 4. What's 4 divided by 4? 1. So one of your solutions is 1. What's negative 7 minus 11? What's negative 18 divided by 4? Does it go in evenly? Reduce it then. What number goes into 18 and also goes into 4? 2. What's 18 divided by 2? So negative 9. What's 4 divided by 2? 2. I say this because your answers are going to be fractions on your test. So your answers are x equals 1 and negative 9 over 2. That's how you use the quadratic formula to find your solutions of a quadratic equation. Now, I did show every step of algebraic work, except for the part where I actually did negative 7 plus 11. Okay? You do not have to show all these steps, okay? But be very careful when you are doing your multiplying. All right? Let's look at the next one. Is it in standard form? Let's get it into standard form. Remember, standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So that means this 7 and this 2 have to go where? The other side. So it's going to be 4m squared minus 7m minus 2 equals 0. Always make sure it's in standard form before you ever use the quadratic formula. What's a? 4. B? Negative 7. C? Negative 2. Those values go into your quadratic formula. I want you guys to do that now. Plug into the quadratic formula. Get me my solutions. Let me know if you have any questions. So, for this one, you should have had negative 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times a times negative 2. A is 4. Then times 2 times 4. 2 negatives make a positive. I forgot my x equals. So that's really 7 plus or minus negative 7 squared is 49. This number, this first number underneath the square root will always be positive, no matter what b is. Okay? Minus a negative 32 all over 8. 2 negatives make a positive, so this becomes 7 plus or minus the square root of what number? 81. Okay? What's the square root of 81? So you're going to have two solutions. The first one, 7 plus 9 over 8, 7 minus 9 over 8. 7 plus 9? 16 divided by 2? Oop. 8 is 2. My bad. And what's the last one? Negative 1/4, because it does reduce. There. Questions? Watch your signs. It will throw everything off. Make sure you're plugging in your values. Take your time to double check that first line, that purple, what I have up here, plugging in. Is number 3 in standard form? How do I get in standard form?
Well, you're going to have to subtract that W to the other side.
Subtract the W to the other side. And? Say again? Subtract 6. What's 4 minus 6? Negative 2. What's A? What's B? Negative 1. What's C? Plug it in. Give me an answer. All right, so plugging it in, x equals what? Not the final answer, but like when I plug things in, what is it? 1 plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, there we go. Okay, so that's going to be 1 plus or minus square root. -1 squared is 1. And what is negative? What's 4 times 5 times -2? -40 all over 10. So that's going to be x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 41 over 10. Can 41 break down? It is a prime number. The only numbers that go into it are 1 and 41. So because of that, that's it. You leave it how it is. Like when you just simplify, you don't have to worry about actually typing this into your calculator to try to get an answer. No, that is correct. That is the most correct answer. Now, let's say that it did simplify. Okay? Let's say that it did simplify. Are there any questions on quadratic formula before I get to another example? Okay. On your desk, I want you to do this one. Okay. Alicia, what's A, B, and C?
A is 1, B is 7, C is 1.
Awesome. So when I go to plug it in, Bug, what's the number underneath my radical after I plug all the numbers in and simplify? What's the number underneath my radical? What's the number underneath my radical? So like once I go and I plug everything in and I do the whole b squared minus 4ac, what's going to be that number that's underneath my radical? This number.
Oh, my bad. Oh, 33.
33 all over 2. Did you guys get this? Does 33 break down? No. So this is your final answer. Okay? This right here, the reason why I only asked for this specifically, this right here has a special name. I want you to add this to your notes. It's called, and please make sure you add in your notes in like a pencil or a pen, not the marker. Okay? This is called the discriminant. Okay? The number underneath the radical is called the discriminant. It's what you get when you do b squared minus 4ac. It tells you what type of answers you're going to have. Okay? If it's positive, you're going to have 2. There's 2 answers right here. It's just condensed into 1. That's what the plus or minus means. There's 2 there. If it's 0, you're only going to have 1. And if it's negative, you're going to have some imaginary numbers type stuff. Okay? So make sure you add that to your notes. The part underneath the radical, that b squared minus 4ac, is called your discriminant. It is called your discriminant. Did you add it in? Okay. We're going to do another one on your desk. Actually, we're going to do a couple more on your desk, and then I'm going to give you your homework. All right? Let's do this one. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Isabel, what's A, what's B, what's C?
2, 6, -9.
Awesome. So when I go to plug it in, Shalyn, what's my new word? Discriminant. What's the number I get underneath the radical? After everything's plugged in, you simplify everything underneath the radical. 108. And then it's all over what number? 4. Okay, that's what you get after you plug everything in and you simplify. Okay, you get to this point. Now, 108 can be broken down. Go back to unit 2 when we were doing radicals, okay? What numbers multiply to give you 108? 36 and 3. Is 36 a perfect square? Yes. So then this becomes -6 plus or minus 6 square root 3 over 4. So if the radical can simplify, then you want to simplify. There is actually one more step you can go. Okay, and we actually talked about this when we did radicals. All right, if these numbers have something in common, like there's a number that's divisible by them, you want to simplify. What number goes into 6? That also goes into 4. It's 2. What's 6? Negative 6 divided by 2? Negative 3. Plus or minus, this is another 3, all over 2. This is your final answer. Okay? Yes, if they're not the same, then you just stop there. Let's look at this one together. Let's look at this one together. Okay? Is it in standard form? No. So then how, Rachel, do I get this in standard form? Can I get my A, B, and C just like how it is? Yes. My C is on the other side, so I gotta move. How do I do that? Okay, when I slide it over, am I sliding it over with a minus sign or with a plus sign? A plus sign. There we go. So now I'm in standard form. Sonny, what's my A, what's my B, and what's my C? Good stuff, okay? We're doing this one together for a reason. Now, when I go to plug everything in, I get X equals plus or minus, skip, minus 7, then the plus or minus, square root. Good stuff. All over 2 times 2. Plugging everything in. Now I have a minus 7 plus or minus 49 minus 72. All over 4. X equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root was 49 minus 72. Negative 23 over 4. You guys remember doing negatives underneath the square root? It's the I. So my final answer here, because 23 can't be simplified, can it? No. So it's going to be negative 7 plus or minus I square root 23 over 4. Why you, oh my God, how math builds off one another, how you can't forget anything that you've done in the past because it comes back to haunt you later. A mess. All right. So in this case, when the discriminant is a negative number, we can't, this is an example of when like there are no real solutions here, okay? So you're either going to see this or you're going to see no real solutions, okay? These are 2 acceptable answers. Now do realize that when you're solving a quadratic, okay, everything that I've said from like finishing the problem up till now, everything I said is important, okay? Just want to let you guys know that. So hopefully you're listening. When you're solving a quadratic and you're finding the x values, you're actually finding the x-intercepts of the quadratic, okay? So you're finding where this graph crosses the x-axis. That's what you're doing when you're doing quadratic formula and stuff like that. So like on the last problem that you did, you found what those 2 values were. But in a situation like this, where there are no real solutions, what does that mean for your graph?
It's not a parabola.
No, it's still a quadratic. It's just not what? Say it a little louder. It doesn't have an x-intercept. So it's like above the x-axis. A quadratic like this is something that looks like this. It doesn't cross the x-axis. So when you have an I involved or a negative underneath your square root, it's not going to cross the x-axis. But if you have something like this where, yeah, it's not a pretty number, but it's still a real number, it's going to cross the x-axis. to give you two solutions. Okay? So if you're ever asked to find the x-intercepts of a quadratic, you can use the quadratic formula and solve. All right? Are there any questions?